Hey everybody, this is your host Brian, and I'm coming at you with another tutorial guide for the double cross hotbar, and this one is for Dark Knight. Now, Dark Knight is one of my all-time favorite jobs right now in Final Fantasy XIV as a patch 3.4. So what we're going to do, pretty standard kind of setup that we've done in the past. We're going to talk about kind of my HUD layout, just show off some settings there. We're going to talk about my double cross hotbar setup that you can see on the screen right now, as well as the macros that I'm using. And then the final piece, we're going to put it all together. We're going to show kind of a tanking example within a dungeon and give you some tips and some tricks there. Something to look out as a Dark Knight. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, we're back. So let's go ahead and talk about the HUD layout as well as the various settings that you might be interested in. So we're going to go and break it down starting now. So first things first, under System and then under HUD layout, you can see all the various controls that I'm using. We're going to focus in on this area because this is the most important part. Got my progress bar, got my target bar right here. Focus target bar and enemy list right there, so I can always kind of see what's going on and what enemies that I'm focusing in on. Again, focusing in on this concept of this kind of this square area, which I'm primarily spending a lot of my focus. Got hotbar 3. It could be really any hotbar, but I've got that set up so that it's job specific, and that I've got various skills that I want to see and reuse on cooldown. Even though I'm not actually going to be clicking on this bar, it's just there for visual reminders of various skills. Have my left cross hotbar, my right cross hotbar, and then my status effects bar. And I moved this down here recently just so that as I have buffs on myself, as I'm in the various stances, I can easily see that and maintain control of that right here. And then any debuffs that I'd have over here on the right hand side. My cross hotbar, my parameter bar, and hotbar 2 in this case, so that I have various emotes that I can have easy access to when I need that help. So that's my kind of playing layout. You feel free to customize however you want to your heart's content. So now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about some of the various settings and how I have this all configured. And it's really primarily focusing in on the hotbar settings. So hide unassigned slots, really important for these hotbars, so that way you don't have them impacting a lot of your view. And then this is where you can turn on and off hotbars for display as well. And so that's pretty straightforward, but hopefully you guys get a good feel for it. Sharing is a little bit more important in my book, because that's how I actually have my extended cross hotbar configured as well. So I have 1, 2, and 3 set to not be shared on both hotbar and cross hotbar. So these are always going to be job specific or even class specific. Everything else is shared, and so things like my 7 slot will allow me to have these skills across all my jobs, and then things like this would always be job specific. And so how I actually get that set up is under my custom section. So enable expanded controls with LT and RT. So I have first the LT to RT is set for my cross hotbar to left, and then my RT and LT is 7 right, and 7 is a shared hotbar. So things like mounts, things like your limit break, pretty much I always want to have them all in the same spot all the time, and so I have access to those right there. The W cross hotbar is the left trigger or the right trigger double tap, which is very handy, and I've got it only enabled for 4 buttons, and then I also have it set to cross hotbar 3 left and right, so they're always going to be job specific, which is very handy. Now here is where you're going to get a lot of control over that. So I set my transparency to 20 because I still want to see it, but I like that it's slightly dimmed because it helps bring my focus to knowing exactly where I'm at. But the settings that I'm using are always display the W cross hotbar, return to W cross hotbar, return to the cross hotbar after the double cross hotbar input. So many cross and double cross, and then position the W cross hotbar independently. So if you turn that on and off, you can see that it has a default position, but you can set a position so you can set those values and put them any which way that you want. And so when I have it set to return to the cross hotbar, here's an example of that. When I press this skill, I'm still now on my right hand side for attacking, which is hugely important in my book. So that's those are my settings. That's my HUD layout. Hopefully this has been helpful, and feel free to always kind of set your values to what works best for your play style, etc. So hopefully this has been, even if you don't play a tank, helpful for any of your other jobs, because I really like the setup across my healers and my DPS classes as well. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the positioning of the skills on the various hotbars, as well as the macros that are used. And you can see that designated by that little gear sign in the corner, and you can see that I've got a couple macros that I have set up for Dark Knight. So when I come back, we're going to talk about that, so stick around. Alright, so let's talk about the setup of the Crosshotbar and the layout of the skills that I have found works really well for my Dark Knight. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can leave the macro section up while I also talk about the skills, so that way we can easily jump back and forth between the two. So first things first, I have Dark Side. I'm going to go ahead and put that on because that's going to enable Dark Dance and that skill in and of itself. And so I have Dark Side press the upper left hand side. I've got Dark Dance, then I got Blood Price, and then Shadow Wall on my up, down, left, and right configuration on the left trigger. I have buffed Dark Passenger, and so if we go look at that up here, you can see that it's Dark Arts and then it's Dark Passenger put together. So I press that twice, and I'm going to get that Dark Passenger. And if for some reason I couldn't use Dark Arts, didn't have the MP, etc., well then it's just going to use Dark Passenger, which is great because that is a kind of nice little AoE. But Dark Arts gives them a blinding effect here, and so that's going to be real important, especially when we talk about ways that you can really effectively tank and also avoid a lot of damage as a Dark Knight. Then I have right here my buff section, and so you can see that I just put on Dark Mind. If I keep clicking on it, it's just going to cycle through the various buffs that I have configured, and so it's going to go through and use those right there. So let's go take a look at that macro right here. So I got a couple PvP options listed here, but really starting here in this highlighted area is going to be my PvE buffs: Dark Mind, Shadow Skin, Foresight, Blood Weapon, and Bloodbath. Blood Weapon would only obviously proc if I was not in the grit stance for Dark Knight, so just take that into mind and feel free to customize this to however you want. The Shadow Skin is what I use for the macro icon because that's important, and so that way I get the cooldown timer for that. But that by no means means that I don't have access to these abilities if they come off cooldown sooner, or I don't end up triggering them all at the same time. And then down here I have Reprisal and then Low Blow. Now it's important, especially if you've seen my other Dark Knight video or any of my tanking videos, really any of my job videos, I put all my stuns listed always in this position. This is important because it's the goal is to make it reactionary, to make it second nature. So you're not thinking about what skill you need. You know, I need a stun or silence, I need to do something. Try to put that in the same spot every time for any of the jobs that you play, so it becomes muscle memory and becomes very easy to use. This will obviously be a negative impact on you if you go to FanFest and you don't have your setup configured the right way. So anyway, we'll talk about that later. And then on the right hand side, I've got, we'll start here in the tanking area. I have what I call my Dark Knight main. So if we go look at Dark Knight main up here, Mercy Stroke, Hard Slash, Plunge, and Unmend. Plunge and Unmend are my ranged attacks. Plunge is going to get me to you quickly. So if I'm running up on you, it's going to have me jump and hit you as well. And then Unmend is that if I'm out of range. So ideally it's going to try and target and use Hard Slash. And that is very important. But it will, if I'm outside of range, I will either plunge towards them, or I'll use Unmend, which has a chance to obviously proc Unleash, which is very handy in and of itself. So what this is always it's always a good opener. This will lead you into Siphon Strike or into Spinning Slash in that direction. So if you think of that, my tank, my hate building is this combo A, B, Y. A, B, Y, or X, circle, triangle if you were using a PlayStation style controller. Now, Power Slash I have macro, so let's take a look at that. Got a PV P ability, so just focusing on the highlighted areas, Salted Earth, Mercy Stroke, and Power Slash. This is going to use those abilities when they're available, and Salted Earth is important because it's going to place it down on the ground whenever it's available. Alright, so that's my hate building combo right there. My damage kind of flows in this general pattern. You'll notice that as well as for my warrior and my other tanks having that same similar strategy. So from Dark Knight main to Siphon Strike to Soul Eater or to Delirium. But you'll notice that Soul Eater is also a macro. So let's go take a look at that right now. And you'll see that outside of the PvP stuff, I've got Dark Arts, Carve and Split, and Soul Eater. So I'm able to Dark Arts, Carve and Split, and then go right into Soul Eater, or I can Dark Arts, Carve and Split, wait a bit, Dark Arts again, and then do Soul Eater to be able to really capitalize on the most potency per second there, depending on really what you're looking for. So, and then lastly, over here, I've got Unleash and Scourge. So Scourge is my dot, Unleash AoE hate build option right there. So that's that. Then obviously over here on the Crosshotbar 3, Bloodbath, Abysmal Drain, Salted Earth macro, which if you go take a look at it, it's just that I have Salted Earth where it's going to automatically target and put it under the feet of my target. But if I have no target, like I do right now, I can then place the target bar anywhere I want. So for anybody who's out there who's new to a controller, you can actually hold the right bumper and then move your left stick, and you can actually set your ground target effects that way. But it's important from this perspective to be able to have both those options available whenever I need them. And then right here is an X potion in case I just need to restore a little life, whether I'm in the Palace of the Dead or not. Then double left side, Dark Arts, a Ether, which to restore some MP. Very important if for some reason I'm out of MP and I need to, be able to do Unleash or something like that. Convalence, which is gonna really kind of make it easy on your healer to get you back up if life is low, and Soul Survivor to be able to tag enemies as desired, especially when they're about to go down, and be able to restore some life and some magic at that point. Anyway, I'm just turn off Dark Side for that time being. Okay, so now let's talk about what I've got on Hotbar 2, which is my extended cross hotbar, and I'm going to go and jump there because it's going to be easier for me to focus in on these options. So Buffed Dark Passenger, that's actually incorrectly named. Let's go ahead and rename it. We're going to say Living Dead. See how easy it is to fix those kinds of mistakes. So Living Dead, all it's doing is just sending a message to the group that I am in trouble and that it's been used. That way anybody can kind of focus in on Grit, so that can turn on and off my taking stance. Dark Arts, another option right there. So obviously you see it listed twice. You can kind of, this is definitely a free spot to play around with if you desire. Foresight, to be able to just instantly call this as a buff, but it's also a part of the buff macro. Carve and Split, it's macro, but in case you want instant access to it specifically outside of that macro. Provoke, you need to grab Hate and win that back, and then Blood Weapon right there. Now I put Sprint here, and I do that for all my jobs, so that way if I ever need to get the heck out of there, it's important. And I know it does sacrifice all your TP if you're on a TP heavy class, but it's better to live than it is to have than to be dead, because if you're dead you might have TP but you're not using it at all. So that's what I have there on that side. So all in all, it's I think it's a pretty awesome layout. It does exactly what I needed to do. This is what I find, and I have this, again, like I've said, across all my tanks. So take that for what you will. Now, when I come back, we're going to cut to some dungeons, and I'm going to be talking about some general tanking strategies and kind of putting all of what I've shown here together all in one place. So stick around. We'll be right back. Alright, so welcome back. Now, what you're seeing here is I'm in Xevital and I'm doing a large pool of all of these monsters at the opening. Now, depending on your party strength, size, gear, you might want to be conservative when pooling large packs, but we have a really powerful party, so it just makes a lot of sense. So I try to get a hit on everybody whenever possible and just use various rotations and cooldowns. One obvious option is you want to use Blood Price. That's going to allow you to get that damage that they're doing on you and be able to restore your MP so that you can do bigger things, bigger attacks. Now, one of the things that I did, and this is important regarding Dark Dance and the buff for Dark Passenger, when you bring that buffed Dark Dance, you're getting an evasion up as well as a parry up. Then buff Dark Passenger gives you then that ability to go in and get put blind on your targets. So they're blinded, your evasion is up, and so you basically, as a Dark Knight tank, you can become unhittable. And depending on your party and depending on your healer, if you ever have a healer that says, I'm here to do DPS, I'm not here to heal you, that can also be very handy, because if they can't hit you, they can't hurt you, and your healer can do some DPS if that's the type of person that they are. And so then going obviously on to the next group of ads, again, I'm pulling big, I'm popping my cooldowns, I'm putting out my rotation, and since when you find a place to set them up, there I am using the soil, so it's like it's up and it's running, and it's just adding to that overall DPS as well. And so you can kind of see me going through my rotations. If I need to pop a stun or a cooldown or whatever, I have a lot of access to that here. And so our DPS for this group is very powerful, and you can see us kind of clearing that. So whenever possible general tanking rules, you want to keep all of your mobs in the red, and then you want to be able to do as much damage as possible and also avoid as much as possible. So you're managing a couple of things here. So we're going to go and actually cut to the final boss of this dungeon, and I'm going to talk about some other tips. Okay, so you've made it to the boss. I like to hit that focus target, and then as a courtesy to everybody, I put a little countdown now that we have that available. So it gives the DPS times to put on their buffs and prepare their attacks before I go in and get that general idea. So depending on the boss, you want to kind of try to position them correctly around the ring or the area in which you're fighting. And so we're going to be here for a while, so I go ahead and put down some ground targets. And then this is where I go into my hate building rotation, so you can see it going off right now. And what this allows me to do is just build up as a little bit as much hate as possible, so that I can then switch to a kind of a DPS rotation like I'm doing now, without having to worry about the DPS pulling off any hate for any time being. You can always manage your hate a couple different ways from the enemy list, and that's listed on the left hand side, as well as your party menu. You can kind of see who's got the hate on the target that you've got selected. So it's hugely important to do that. And then obviously you just rinse and repeat and go from there. Tanking in and of itself shouldn't be too difficult, kind of when you have a good feel and a comfort level for it. So if you don't know the fight, always feel free to ask. But just try to do your best to maintain the hate and have the focus on you, and then pop cooldowns when needed, just to help your healers out. So the less they have to heal, the more they can damage or be able to focus in on other areas of things that they need to be doing. So it's a total team effort, obviously, within any MMO. But anyway, with that, I just want to say thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you like the new format for the tanking videos, if you like the real dungeon stuff as well that was suggested, and I thought it was a good idea, so we're going to be doing that going forward, as well as if you have any general tips or any hotbar layouts of your own. Y'all have been fantastic, so please like, favorite, subscribe for more videos, and don't be afraid to share and tell others of what we got going on here with Work to Game. So with that, my name's Brian. This has been my Dark Knight tanking and controller guide, and I'll see you guys in my next video.